We return now to the indicative mood. We're going to look at the 5th out of 6 tense forms in the indicative mood. This is the perfect tense form. The perfect occurs in significant places in the New Testament and often for significant statements, such as when Jesus says in John 19, verse 30, "It is finished," referring to his work on the cross. Now, the meaning of the perfect has been subject to some debate in recent years in academic circles. The traditional view of the perfect has been to understand it like the Latin perfect, that is, indicating a past action with present consequences, so that it would be translated as I have loosed, you have loosed, he has loosed, etc. Recently, other scholars have presented alternative views for understanding the perfect, seeing that traditional view is quite flawed. The position we'll adopt in this grammar is to treat the perfect like a type of present, in fact, a kind of super present. That means that we will translate the perfect like the present, I loose, although not usually I am loosing, that progressive option, but as I loose, usually understanding the perfect to be more prominent or intensified in some way. This is because it is supposed that the perfect and the present share the same internal aspect, the imperfective aspect. The reality is we need to pay close attention to the context whenever a perfect occurs, not only to note that this is a significant form, but to note how the context will affect our translation, depending on the lexeme, the actual word that is used with the perfect, and other factors in the context. Occasionally it will be appropriate to translate the perfect as I have loosed, other times I loose, and at other times even like the aorist, such as the example of apestalken, he sent. About 10% of perfect indicatives need to be translated that way. The issues are complicated, and we won't get into them any further now. That is more the territory for a second year of Greek study. But it is worth being aware that these issues are circulating. The view adopted in this grammar is not the majority view currently, but it is the view that we think best explains the use of the perfect in the Greek New Testament. Now we come to discuss the forms for the Greek perfect indicative. Let's look at the table. First, the perfect has only 2 forms to be learnt, 2 sets of forms, because the middle and passive voice share the same forms. This is just like in the present and the imperfect tense forms, where the middle and passive voices use the same forms. And we need to let the context decide whether the middle is met or the passive is met. But let's look at the active first. There are 3 parts to pay attention to. First, there is something that we call reduplication, and I will talk more about that in the next lesson. But in short, what that involves is taking the consonant from the beginning of the stem of the verb and reproducing it out the front with an epsilon in between. So because our stem is lu, from luo, it begins with the lambda. We have the lambda out front, then the epsilon, then the lambda of the stem. After this reduplication, we have the lu, the stem. Then we have this distinctive kappa sound that runs through the active forms. And then these personalized endings. So let's work through them. The perfect active indicative, first person singular, is le luka. Second, le lukas, le luken, le lukamen, le lukate, le lukasin. Using a modern pronunciation, lelika, lelikas, leliken, lelikamen, lelikate, lelikasin. By the way, that last form, that third person plural form in the active voice, has an alternate form. Instead of le lukasin, we also find le lukan, which occurs 9 times out of the 32 occurrences of the third person plural perfect active indicative. So they are the active forms. Now we come to the middle passive forms. There are only 3 sections to worry about here. We have the reduplication once again. we have the stem of the verb, once again, and then we have these distinct endings that pertain to the middle passive perfect. My, sai, tai, or me, se, te. Going through them, lelu mai, lelu sai, lelu tai, lelumitha, lelusthe, leluntai. Modern pronunciation, lelime, lelise, lelite, lelimitha, lelisthe, lelinte. These are the forms. They need to be learnt because the perfect is an important form in the New Testament. It is not the most common form, not at all. In fact, it is the second rarest form. But when it occurs, it is in a significant place, usually for a significant point that's being made. You need to remember the reduplication, the stem, the kappa in the active voice, and these distinctive endings in the middle and passive voices.